Hi guys, a quick video. I've had a couple of requests sort of from how I've set up my boat ledgering rig, deadbait rig for pike, and I sort of showed you my trace wallet with the way I have them laid out, different sizes. I've made my own to suit me deadbaits. So a couple of people have asked if I could do a video on how I make a trace or set up a trace. So firstly, components. I like using 7-strand titanium. It's bomb proof. It takes a real good beating. It doesn't get all twisted and mangled up like normal wire. And I'll give you a quick demo here. Sort of, well, here's one here. The wire's gonna outlast your hooks, definitely, 100%. This is actually one that I had made. Don't know if you can see that. The A has actually broke off. The hook's gone. But all I have to do is literally trim that off and use the length as if I'm starting from scratch again. Like the trace, the wire itself straight. There's no damage to it. But here's Super S-Ox. I sort of, it would have been wire I used back when I first started pike fishing. Knew no different. And thought it was great stuff. But if you take a look, right, you double that over, make a loop, and give that a squeeze. That's what you're left with. You know, it hasn't really good memory. It gets mangled up. There's like a plastic coating on it. It gets stripped off after a fish, and they're just crap. You pull a trace out, and it's all coiled up. So now AFW, make your loop, squeeze it tight as you want, straight. It literally, it's, you know, it will not kink like cheaper wire. Now don't get me wrong, it's not cheap. It could be, depending on where you go for it, could be £30 for a 10-foot length. I just pay that, cut it into 2-foot lengths, so you're going to get 5 really good bomb-proof traces. I have traces in this wallet, and they could be 5 and 6 years old. Most of them are maybe on their 2nd or 3rd set of hooks. So now you're going to need, again, quality crimps too, because I've seen crimps sort of, as you squeeze down, you'll get stress lines on the sides of the crimp. Now, not only is that to do with crappy material, but if you use a crimp that's too big for the gauge of wire that you're using, obviously it's gonna fold down more on itself, and you're gonna stress the sides. So picking the right size crimp. I use AFW ones, don't mind the container. This is a Fox container that I've threw them into. I use AFW crimps or Quantum Mr. Pike. They're made by AFW, they're just rebranded. So I think I like making traces out of £50 AFW. These crimps are, as far as I can remember, I think they are large or medium. I'm not overly sure. Check it out whenever you're getting your stuff. You could be using £30 wire, you could be using £75 wire, just up to what you want to use yourself. So start off, this isn't the full 2 foot, it's just a cutting that I have left, but it'll do for a demonstration. And BKK hooks, I have sort of switched to them of late because they're insanely sharp, and they hold up well sort of to frozen dead baits and things. But again, if you're trying to push a small treble into a frozen roach, like a solid frozen roach, you're gonna break hooks. Doesn't make a difference. I have yet to see a hook not break. But at the minute there, me pick. So first of all, take the end of your wire, take one of your crimps, slide your crimp onto the wire. Alright, now take your hook, pass the line through the eye once, And now what you want to do is slide the sleeve back down over the tag end, and you're left sort of with this here. So you have your hook in the loop, you have your crimp. Now, most or a lot of shop bought traces, they'll literally just crimp that now and call it done. That's where you run into issues on traces. It's so easy to put pressure on that, even when it's crimped, and for that tag end to just slip out. So the way I do it, take this tag end, turn it over, and pass it back into the top end of the crimp and push it in, and you'll be left with something that looks like this. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not overly sure if it's focusing in, but you'll have a loop at this end and a small loop at this end. Now, passing it back in, not only are you giving the crimp more material to bait on, but for that tag end is never going to come against any pressure or stresses. So for that to come out, to allow this other one to open, is practically impossible. So that's why I do it. I'll do that sort of on the traces. I remake traces for my Savage Gear lures and that. So what you want to do now, give that a crimp. You don't have to murder it, just a nice firm squeeze, and you have something again that looks like this. Okay, now depending on what size you want to make it, or what size of bait it's going to be for, depends on how far up you put your next hook. So again, what you're doing here, you're taking the tag end, your long end, passing it through the eye of the hook. Alright, so you'll have your hook basically sliding along there. Now, depending on what size, turn the hook and run the wire down the shank. Alright, and take your tag end, this tag end, push it back on itself, so you're left with this here. Take it around the bottom of one of the barbs on the hook and just wrap it around the shank. I like to do this 4 or 5 times, and then if you take your tag end, pass it back down through the eye, pull it tight, this is what you're left with. And that's essentially your deadbait trace. It's just a case now of doing the same at the opposite end. If you take your crimp, pass your crimp on. Now, depending on what way you like making your traces, some people like them with a swivel on so that they can just tie on their trace. I've showed you the way I've left my deadbait rods. I have the quick attach snap on the end of it, so I don't need a swivel. It's just another component. You're just, not that they're expensive, you're just adding price to your trace and just something else that could go wrong. Just another swivel. But same applies. Take your tag end, pass it down through your crimp. Now, if you get better at this, should we say, or after you've made a few, you can afford to be a bit tighter with material. I've sort of done that many now that I kind of avoid cutting off any waste. You know, there's no waste tag on that, and we'll do the same sort of on this. But if you leave your tags small, it can be a bit tricky. If you want, just leave them longer. Once you pass it through, you can cut it off and neaten it up at the end. But take your tag end, pass it back into the bottom of your crimp, and again you're going to have what looks like 2 loops, and that's what stops the wire from slipping. So just in case, again, don't murder it, just a nice bit of pressure on it, and they will never come out. The only problem you're going to have with that is if the crimp gets worn out, but I've never had a crimp get wore out. Like I said, some of those other traces are 5 and 6 years old. So that's it, ready to go into your trace wallet, and hopefully that'll be of some help. Again, what you can do on these, what I used to do, is you can put a bit of shrink tubing over your crimp and again over the shank of this. Now I've stopped doing that because I found that the heat shrink was holding water. Now granted, I know people will say titanium and your hooks and that are coated or they're stainless, but they do rust. If the water's trapped in there, you will get rust, so I just don't bother now. There's no need. I've never had any issues, no tangles, and it's given your connections and stuff a chance to dry out in your wallet without actually trapping moisture. So hopefully that's helped. If there's anything else that you want to see myself do, or if you're interested in how I re-rig my Savage Gear lures with titanium, give me a message or get me on TikTok or YouTube. Alright, thanks guys.